I feel like we can regain the sovereignty of our minds. We can be free. We don't have to give in to all these like drugs and ending our lives and feeling hopeless. It just takes a little bit of diligence and a little bit of exploring, and we can find that freedom in our minds, and it's very important. I feel like it helps out the entire cosmos when we free up ourselves, and when we actualize ourselves, it helps the entire collective in profound ways.
Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again. And today we have another special guest with us. We have Lama Dawai Gocha with us from his YouTube channel, Meditation Online. Now, he is a yogi from the Tibetan Buddhism branch. So, yeah, I'm sure this is going to be really fascinating to learn a little bit about some of that.
Should totally be fascinating. I caught a little bit of it from his interview with Gary Haskins, and sounded like he was making some sense. So,
all right, guys. Well, we won't keep you waiting. Let's get into it. Yeah. But I don't know if you're ready. We can jump right into this.
Do you have any questions? I guess that we covered that just
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's great to get to know you guys. I always admire people like you and Gary and others that are preserving spirituality in your own ways and these unique high-tech ways of spirituality that are springing up. So I watched some of your videos and things like that. I love the way you interact with each other and I won't say who, I don't even remember his name, but you were challenging one guy. I really appreciated that. I think James was uh challenging, just pushing back a little bit, and I really appreciated that you could hold your own and not be totally convinced by pretty words and nice sounding philosophies and things like that. So I think it was the guy who was talking about how uh, there's the highest level of enlightenment, but nobody gets there, and all these
yeah.
things. So that
Yeah.
was kind of interesting. But anyway, I appreciate the way you guys carry yourself and just the fact that you're preserving all this stuff means a lot to me. And I'm wishing you guys the best and all your viewers, of course, because it's a crazy world, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. For some reason, I'm getting this notion that like maybe we're coming into a time where the people that are sort of inclined towards stability and awakening type stuff, like it's going to maybe become easier for them, but it's also going to be easier for people that really want to go jump in both feet into like an egoic uh, realm. And those things might just emerge at the same time and sort of equal out at the same time. And like it's always been, like nothing new under the
Very nice.
sun type thing. But I feel like there's hope for people that go, maybe have the idea, when's the world gonna awaken? It's like, well, I think there is gonna be possible for people that want to awaken, but there's gonna
Mhm.
be people that don't want to and don't have to, too, I think
Yeah.
maybe. You know what I'm saying? Do you
Yeah,
guys know what I'm saying?
they have scriptures and a lot of texts that talk about something interesting that we're kind of all on our way to full awakening.
Oh yeah.
And even if we bang our heads up against the wall for years and
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
uh, it's all every head bang is bringing us closer
Yeah.
to our freedom, to our
Yeah.
innate freedom, right?
That's a good framework. That's a good one to keep hope
And
in.
yeah, and then some people just want to expedite it, or they're ready to awaken, and
Yeah.
others they'd prefer to bang their head for a little while longer or
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Ain't
Is
that
that
enjoy
the
the
sen
truth?
enjoy the sense world, right?
Yeah. 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 Enjoy the story world and the sense world.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. It's like the addiction to the story, right? It's a struggle, right? To give up the story, everything that you've kind of preserved and crafted and formed, and
Mhm.
then now something's asking to give that up. And it's like,
It could, yeah, it could be like that.
I had a question I wanted to ask you. I said, is this a dumb question, Justin? But I just wanted to ask it. I want to jump kind of right into the deep end right away, if that's okay. And it's
Sure.
about awareness because I've listened to a couple of your other podcasts where you've talked with other guys and you were talking about awareness. And I just want, from your perspective, maybe as a definition in this grandiose spiritual community out there where everyone seems to have their own ideas and thoughts about things, how do you define awareness? What is awareness?
Oh, that's a powerful question right off the top. Huh? I like that. Getting right into it. Um, well, it's a reductive word. We admit that it's reductive. That means, it includes some things, but it leaves other things out. So some people don't even like the word awareness to point to this mind of yours, this pure aspect of your mind. But in Dzogchen terms, awareness is a word that's used to point to the purely clear light aspect of your mind. So the idea here is that you can have lots of thoughts, you can have lots of experiences, you can even be a child that's growing their brain. There's some intelligence that's growing that brain. It's outside of the brain because it's growing it and maintaining it. So there's a basis for that intelligence, a cognitive basis. And so there's must be a basis for if there's any type of healing of a wound or any type of thoughts happening in your mind, there must be some kind of basis for that of consciousness, right? So you can find this, and this is where we can start to prove things. We don't need to just blindly go into this kind of stuff. But when you have thoughts, there's a knowingness. Like, I just said when you have thoughts, there's a knowingness. I just said that, and somehow we all know that because there's this kind of almost like a security camera. It's a part of our mind that just sits there, and it's required to hold everything, and it's required to, hold it as it rises, abides, and ceases. So whether it's a thought, whether it's a state of consciousness, this part of your mind is always there. So they call it kunshi in Tibetan, or shi sometimes, or alaya vichnan in Sanskrit. It's this basis. It's termed sometimes as the ground too, the ground consciousness. And so in our practice, we point to that and we kind of hinge on it, knowing that the word awareness is leaving out some things. Like it leaves out awareness kind of tells you that it's cognizant, but it has a connotation of a doer, right? Your awareness, whose awareness? And awareness is a kind of doing. But this mind that we're referring to is a kind of passive we're doing within it. It provides us the space for doing. So awareness is a knowingness, yes, but it's also just like space. It's unmoving, and you can kind of verify that. It's always here, no matter if we're running or sleeping. And so it's this space-like volumetric basis of the mind, and people access it in many different ways. The average person is oscillating in and out of it. If they just stub their toe, they know that they walked in the wrong direction and stubbed their toe because this awareness security camera was kind of sitting there the whole time. So the choice ends up, it becomes a choice, hopefully, for people that we can reorientate ourselves from out of the movement of our mind. So instead of being in thoughts, we can be in that basis. And that's what distinguishes an awakened person and the Buddha Dharma, is that have you reorientated into your whole mind? And so, yeah, awareness has also the connotation of cognition and insubstantiality. So it doesn't exist anywhere. We can't find awareness, but it's purely present. So we can't say it doesn't exist, and we can't say it exists. It has no substantial existence. And they say it's beyond extremes, beyond the ancient tetralemma, as they call it in Sanskrit, and this pranama Indian logic, right?
Well, I wanted to say, like, well, I feel like you answered my question there, but a lot of people are, I'm sure, would have the question like, well, is awareness taking place within brains, right?
Well,
And you're saying that it's not, right? Is
yeah.
that what you're saying?
Well, we have to verify this for ourselves, right? It's not a belief system. We
Hmm.
don't want to turn Dzogchen into a belief system because it's dealing with bare bones, clear light, naked cognition that holds all beliefs that you could have. So, but if we want to speculate, then we can just say, well, look at the box jellyfish or starfish or beings that have had no brains, like humans that have had no brains and things like that. A box jellyfish I always mention because no heart, no brain, yet makes decisions, hunts, protects itself. So we have this mind here, and the brain is huge, right? The brain is awesome, and it's responsible for vast amounts of cognition, no doubt. But is it the sole proprietor? Is it the sole basis of cognition itself? to me, that's a stretch because how does the brain, which is cognition or supposedly the root of cognition, how is that growing itself and maintaining itself? It needs a basis of cognition to do that.
Yeah, it's like to me, it makes me think of like, well, who really stitched together the first flower that reached for the sun?
Yes. Yeah, and existential questions like that aren't as important, right? They're the four imponderables in the Buddha Dharma. So pondering these things too much could cause you vexation.
Hmm.
And like I always cite the numbers, we only know 20 to 40,000 words, the average person. Actually, it becomes much less than that, around 10,000 words per person. And we don't want to confine this view,
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
freedom
Hmm.
our mind, our beingness into a definition that's perhaps constrained into those constructs, right?
So we shouldn't think about the jellyfish?
Well, there's a middle way, majamaka they call it. We can, but to confine our reality to say that I'm just like a jellyfish and I know it. You
No,
know?
I know it becomes belief again, right? In a
Well,
way.
then it becomes a rigid kind of
Yeah.
because thoughts and beliefs can form our reality and hugely influence it, or they
Hmm.
can be just kind of the play
Hmm.
within your mind. They don't
Hmm.
have to be sticky.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that term sticky, that resonates. Because it's what it's like, and I think you'll that term makes more sense if you've even gotten a glimpse of the non-stickiness. Like if you're fused, you don't even barely understand even the notion of stickiness. But if you have a good
Hmm.
teacher, maybe such as yourself, that can teach you how to just even get a glimpse of the separation, that you're like, oh yeah, it is like sticky.
That's it,
The
brother. Right there.
stories
They
and
call it,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. They call it cognitive fusion
Hmm.
and neuroscience. They're on to this. Past 5 years, they've really made strides.
That's the craziest part to me is the scientific part of it, which, like all philosophy seems to come up into an edge. And sometimes over the years, I have been a proselytizer of honesty and truth. And I feel like there's kind of, you reach a place where you're like, okay, I've ruined my life dedicated to truth and I've hit the bottom of it. And the question sort of changes to like, what's it doing then? If this is truth, how is it flowing and what do we do about it? And the same with philosophy, like, okay, I've reached these paradoxical edge points. And for some of us, we exhaust that part. And then I think for some people, the danger is they get mired in that world and they're just like Freddy Krueger, Nancy going up the stairs, get going through the melting floor. Like
Yeah.
when
But
the answer to, I think to an enlightened person, like or awakened person, if that's what you are, I think probably sometimes seems like just stop it, stop that, and become deeply present in your body, and then you can finally be aware of all that shit that you've been holding at bay, and that's going to make itself known. And then when that settles down, you'll be able to see the perspective of non-egocentrism.
that's wonderful.
Does that make sense, everybody?
Oh yeah, that to me, if we don't overcomplicate what you just said, that's the remedy
It's
right
too
there.
late. I did it for you.
Just
I can overcomplicate for everybody. Just listen to what this guy says now.
But yeah, the essence is just you'd be surprised just that diffusing from away from thoughts,
Hmm.
just believing them less, that alone is going to save your
Oh yeah.
life
Oh
or
yeah.
save somebody's life because people end their lives because of thoughts that drive them crazy.
Oh yeah.
And they do all kinds of other crazy stuff. They hurt their
Yeah.
families and you name it. They go to drugs and alcohol and all these things, right?
From a
And it's
narrow
all
view, from a narrow thought-based
thoughts.
fixated view, it's like widen that perspective and then widen it to the point where like it reminds me a lot of Byron Katie when you said they believe their thoughts. Like a big part of I don't know if you know who Byron Katie is.
I think I've heard of her. Yeah.
She's one of these people that had sort of like a spontaneous awakening. Like she wasn't necessarily part of some specific spiritual thing, and then suffering brought her to it, and her mind did separated all at once. And she goes, I just noticed that if I believed my thoughts, I suffered. I noticed it, and so I stopped believing my thoughts, and then it cascaded, and then it was like a waterfall, and then she was awareness took over. You know,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, well, thankfully, this is a universal truth. If it was too proprietary, like to one group of people or one person, then I think it would be a farce. But
Hmm.
and you know, different paths will go deeper into it in different ways, and some will stay more shallow in the shallow end.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the essence is cognitive diffusion, unbinding. Yeah. I mean, if we can continue to just share that with our friends and get that out and begin to continue, well, we're in a awakening. I think it's time for many, many beings to awaken, and
Yeah, it
that's it
seems like
right there.
the suffering is kind of accelerating because I wanted to bring up kind of like the mental health epidemic. It seems like, especially in Western countries, I don't know, there's a lot of people suffering right now.
Mm.
And is it because they cannot separate from their thoughts? Is this the reason why, because
Well,
and is there like a breaking point? Is something gonna shift or what?
yeah, I think that's a really compassionate kind of place to have your mind about other people like that in our society. And I think that, you know, first and foremost, we have our own karmic connections, right? And to me, I don't just prescribe to one life. So you could come into this life with a strong desire for food or something like that, and immediately you start indulging and you're around these influences, these kind of ghosts that are haunting you about the food. Then we get into your friends along that journey with your overindulgence. Those will be the social engineering that we see, that we've seen for, I mean, the past, in the 1900s, they've really gotten high tech with social engineering, and they're getting into people's minds in really creepy ways. I always cite Edward Bernays because he's a great example of how to creep into people's minds. He got women to smoke cigarettes. He invented bacon eggs for breakfast, all kinds of stuff that, and the advertisers have essentially said, hey, we can get into people's minds. Let's hire expensive doctors. Let's do this. And so it became unrestrained in regards to the psychology and the emotion of it. And particularly for the past 70 years, we've been just getting hacked. And now algorithms are hacking us even more. And so to me, it becomes a matter of survival, really, that we got to repossess our sovereignty in our minds and
Hmm.
do that diffusion, that unbinding from thoughts, because we're having thoughts that weren't even ours. They were planted there by somebody who used the right color scheme and the right tones and
Yeah.
frequencies and
You know,
things like that.
I don't know who Edward Bernays is, but I get this idea that he's like an
He wrote
advertising
the book.
guy.
He wrote the book called Propaganda.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Believe
And I
Sigmund
think about that
Sigmund Freud's
post
nephew.
I think about the post World War II, like, if you look into history, there's been all kinds of like, it's amazing anybody ever gotten laid and never, because seems so brutal when we look at it. I don't even know what history is. It just seems like brutality forever. But then you look
Yeah,
at the World War II shift, you know what I mean? Like the world settles down after like severe tension and craziness everywhere. And then it must have been a field day to exploit people's leftover shit. You know what I mean? Like it must have been a field day for people to be like, oh, I can exploit their need to feel social. I can exploit their need
right.
to satiate all this trauma they're carrying. So it's so easy. It's shooting ducks in a barrel. Smoke the cigarette, you get that feeling you're chasing. Eat
Yeah.
this food because that's tradition, and do this because this, and then all the way till now, where it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. But philosophy is two-sided to me. Like philosophy can be the key out of the prison, but it can also make you mad. Like like I don't know if I'm even using it properly. The word philosophy comes to mind when I think it's the last vestige when something like what you're talking about is happening, where they're bombarding us with control tactics and manipulation, and everybody's doing this to everybody. Something in you goes revolts and goes, "This is not right. Something's not right." No,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know.
Alan Watts said all the drug addicts and everything are mystics that have been captivated. They
Yeah,
want to break out of this conditioned
yeah.
materialism. They don't know how, so they turn to drugs, and now we have like this fentanyl
It works
epidemic.
both ways. Mystics are drug addicts, and like drug addicts are mystics, and mystics are secretly drug addicts. Because if you look at the neurochemistry, it's like, like somebody that's gotten awakened, oftentimes addictive stuff will slough off. And then you go, well, I'm doing my addictions to maintain being able to handle life. And they're like, yeah, I'm handling life because I'm high on my own supply in a sense. Like, you know what I mean? I'm stabilized and aware, and I'm actually not abandoning myself. So that's how I'm doing the trick. You're doing the same thing. You're just going to drug addicts just going the other way with it. They're
Yeah.
abandoning themselves to deal with it.
Yeah, but you guys were asking, basically like what's wrong with the world? What I think is wrong, and that's it, is that the mentality, the thoughts that we're having in society, people have a very limited spectrum of what they can even do with their life and what they can even
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And awakening's not even on the radar,
Mm-hmm.
right? For a lot of people, they just have to get in these little mini cults everywhere, and you have to fit in and do all this stuff, and
Yeah.
that's how you live your life. And they all find out that pursuing sense pleasures ends up being disappointing and not providing inner peace or happiness. But we're getting told pursue sense pleasures, make money, do this, do that. And we follow this kind of 1950s TV family life that ends up being a facade because we don't tackle the mind. We don't ever consider what's going on in my mind, right? Or
Yeah.
do I need nourishment to my traumas? Or have I been programmed? Do I need to deprogram? Things like that. We don't really consider. So I think, as far as on a wider scale of society, what's happening here is that just like you would have a dark night of the soul, we're kind of everything is being pushed up. I mean, the average kid has access to everything from porn to murder videos to you name it. And so that's sort of what happens with awareness practice. All your dark stuff starts to come out and to the surface. And so it's like you can't hide in a 1950s bubble, right?
Yeah.
And or a Judeo-Christian bubble and pretend like, these things aren't in your mind or in your collective reality. And so I think beginning to really, and maybe technology will expedite this, but to understand the involvement of our mind too in this reality, because modern science is even saying our mind has a huge role in the creation of this reality. I cite Donald Hoffman, who says the chances of natural, after a lot of testing and experiments, the chances of natural selection reflecting the true nature of reality are virtually zero. So he's basically saying that we've made up a reality here based on physicality to satisfy our desires. We're basically making a cartoon here, and it's not the true nature of reality according to these theories anyway.
Oh, that's so
And
interesting. I love it. It's like, experientially, it just makes me think that you could test somebody, like you could find like an enlightened person and hook up wires to their head and see what's going on and like detect different brain activity than somebody that's not that way. But it works both ways. The experience of it is like, well, you could science it all you want, but I'm aware of something eternal and the thing that's eternal, and I'm aware of the interconnectedness of all things or something like that.
they did that with Matteo Ricard. They actually hooked him up to a bunch of EEGs and measured him and declared him the happiest man in the world. He was
Right?
a
Yeah.
Buddhist monk.
Here's
And
another thing. We were talking about like the sort of collective dark night of the soul that could be going on here. And I also want to just say that I also think it really is probably, if not one of the best time in history by and large also. Because you can pair a lot of this stuff with science. Like I even look back to like a figure like Osho in the 80s, and when I look at people who I respect their intellect and I respect their insight, and he's one of them. But I
Yeah.
love to see everything he did wrong. And you know what I mean? For all the
Too
books that
many
he
Rolls Royces.
well, I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like I love thinking about the fact that like he really neglected his body, and we're in a time where you could find someone like you that directs someone into awakening and at the same time actually have it not be a totally entropic, if that's the right word, endeavor that like dissolves you into like a living corpse. Like
Right.
you could maintain the body too with the scientific knowledge. There's all these avenues of making an income. Like I want to ask you what in a moment what your lifestyle's like, because in the world, in the Western world that we all got like, Fight Club style lifestyle obsession disorder. Like it has to look away and we got to be this way. But what does it look like for somebody that is awakened and doesn't have to maybe sees through the sort of games that everyone's playing and sees something more appropriate for their homeostasis. Like, wait a sec, if I just like be a candle maker, or like if I just do this sort of thing, I don't have to participate so actively and like whole hog believe these contemporary stories about what all this pleasure world, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to necessarily immerse into
Yeah.
the culture of it.
And
Yeah.
still be able to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think thus we have counterculture, right? And that's
Yeah.
why we kind of have, I think many people are bailing out of the mainstream sort of hypnosis, because
Yeah.
that's what it is, a hypnosis.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I wouldn't be a great example. I live in a 12 by 24 shed that I threw some insulation and drywall into, and I live with five dogs and a cat.
That is an
Um,
awesome
Yeah,
example.
that's
Like, oh, I'm
yeah.
not a good example. I'm just a fucking carpenter like Jesus, and I live in Noah's Ark.
but I messed up the numbers.
You know
Instead
how
of
many
two of
people's
everything,
secret
I got
dream
too
that
many.
is? There's one of them right there.
Hey, buddy, this is Little Bear. See, I got my brother with me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I live up in the mountains here in Taos, New Mexico, off the grid. And so I was a big proponent in activism. Basically, I saw that the earth, the elements are taking a huge hit by this sort of cultural disposition that we're taking of consumerism, buying a lot more stuff than we need to. Um, and I think every time we buy something we don't need to, and I'm not hating or knocking anybody out there, okay? I believe in live and let live, but if
Yeah.
you're gonna ask me, I'm a huge boycott advocate. Like I really don't want to give anything to big businesses that are hurting our people and hurting our elements, whether it's the water, the air, etc., the
Yeah.
earth. And so to me, I've renounced and um, whether it be the way I look, whether it be my social class, my education, these are all things that I've renounced and I've boycotted. Now, dude, you are heavy.
Looks like a big doggy.
Get off me.
He's trying to get enlightened.
He's just he's just trying to get it on the YouTube video.
You ever
Yeah,
see
so I live
those?
off
Sorry.
the grid basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. And I was gonna say, like, have you ever seen on the internet somebody will post a thing and it'll be like, "Where would you live?" And they'll show a bunch of remote locations. It'll be like, have you ever seen those? It'll be like a
Yeah.
little
Oh
house in
yeah.
the woods, and it'll be like, I'm picking this one. You know, it's funny the idea of somebody that's paying like a crazy mortgage and busting their ass to meet society's expectations and then secretly imagining escaping, or even busting their ass even harder to have a little escape that they go to on weekends and burning themselves out. And you're like, I'm just going to renounce it. I'm just going to renounce it. And when you
Oh, it was
state it like
crazy.
that, it sounds so simple. And I was even listening to Sadhguru talk about that. And they were like, what gives you the motivation to do all this stuff you do? Because he's like trying to save soil or something. And he
Oh,
was like, I just seems sane to me to care about whether or not our future kids have a planet to live on. Like, that's it,
yeah.
you know? And I
Yeah.
know it's not that simple, but in a way,
No, it is that simple.
it kind of is, though.
We gotta start locally.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how much, they have the butterfly effect, right? Where
Hmm.
everything ripples into the cosmos. And that's an ancient Zoroastrian um, belief that every good deed, every honest word, every bit of innocence that we can inject into the collective is just pumping up and keeping good strong and preventing the whole place from being overcome by a kind of darkness, a kind of despair. And so I like that about Zoroaster. I think that their whole idea of keeping your words honest, being righteous, being good, saving lives for no reason, even when nobody's watching, things like that. The more we can just stay real, people are getting convinced out of their naturalness. It's like we are compassionate beings, we are good beings,
Hmm.
but we're getting convinced to be materialist zombies that are clawing each other to death at Walmarts and things like that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
to get the Black Friday sale or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think humans do have by and large, like an innate capacity for compassion that gets hijacked and over like drywalled over with trauma and all kinds of different things. But there's compassion in there, and it seems to expand in certain when certain shifts take place. Like, oh God, I feel even more more compassionate. It can
yeah,
is possible, and and I think the world's gone through really dark times, like the Dark Ages. You know, if you look into that a little bit, it's like good. Like we'd all three of us would be burned at the stake. We wouldn't even
yep,
probably get to talk. But that's what I mean by we live in a time where there's even room to start exploring some of these things. And when I think about the 1980s, I think about that the cartoon image of like the guy with like huge shoulder pads, like tall haircut, like giant cell phone on cocaine, like doing stocks with one hand and like cocaine in the other, and just like that pure egotistic drive. And then following that was like sort of there was like almost like remember when we were kids, like there was grungy counter
Yeah.
hippie type culture emerging, and it's just it's there's these emergent things sort of pointing the other way, and sometimes you don't always know why. I think in the beginning why it's good to be if you don't have no access to compassion, so it might be a little robotic in the beginning, like I'm just gonna almost experiment. What are they talking about? Maybe I'll just try to give a homeless guy some money today, or maybe I'll just try to help somebody today, or try to be a good person. But then I actually think if you can unwire from the madness enough, like a real compassion maybe can emerge. I'm not that
yeah,
compassionate by my nature. I'm not going to lie about that, but I do have that capacity to feel like empathy, and I see people who've got more of it seemingly, and people that have less, like
yeah,
as if it's possible to go up and down, you know, in compassion and empathy. And what happens when people start being compassionate towards each other or empathetic towards each other, even a little bit? What happens? Does culture get better? Do things get less hostile? Do we suffer less
yeah,
collectively?
yeah. I would say, that's the essence of our approach is that underneath your contractions, underneath your fabrications and confusions and self-absorption, not you personally, but us collectively, we have a natural state there. They call it the natural state. And
Mm,
basically, we use awareness, like I was saying before, we reorientate into awareness and we let the fires of conditioning burn out, essentially. So we're no longer in there fabricating the cartoon, making the cartoon, but all the momentum that has been there, now that we're in awareness, can burn out. It can be in
mm,
a state of nirvana or exhausting itself. Self-liberation, they call it. And so we may have this programming, but how do we get out of the programming? Well, you first have to get out of the programming, like reorientate yourself out of it into a different dimension of
mhm,
cognition. And then you may still be under the sway of your programming,
mm.
and you may have to deal with that for a little while. That,
Especially if
I'm
you've karmically like built it up.
exactly
You know what
because
I
you have
mean?
that momentum.
Yeah.
And that's why the awareness practice is very powerful because you get introduced to awareness and you're not just like, oh yeah, awareness, I know about that. But you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna use this as my path, as my guru, as my refuge. Like you're a little bit more sincere about it. And then that habit, that momentum is like throwing a rock in the air. You're just waiting for it to land now within awareness.
Mhm.
Instead of being in there throwing more rocks, right? And creating more momentum, stirring the waters even more and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I need more of that.
I wanted to kind of ask you about where you are right now as a yogi within your Tibetan Buddhism path journey. Like, maybe you could tell us, because we kind of skipped over it, but maybe you could tell us a little bit now about how you kind of this all began for you.
Yeah, I didn't really begin it. It was always around. When I was a kid, I was just my family went through a lot of just trying to get stable and safe and everything. My mom was a single mom and had two kids. And so she was a Vajrayana Buddhist in the Nyingma tradition, which is the ancient the old school of Tibetan Buddhism. Nyingma
Okay.
tradition is one of the four or five main schools there. They actually have like six if you include Jonang and the Bon tradition. So I've been around that my whole life and learned mantras when I was a kid and met lots of spiritual leaders and monastics and things like that throughout my life and gotten all these empowerments, went to many retreats and um, yeah, so since I learned my first mantra when I was 15, Guru Rinpoche mantra, and then I was meditating and doing yoga since I could walk really, and
Wow.
always just loved animals and helping people, right? Just wanting to, as soon as I saw an opportunity to save somebody or help somebody, I would just run into the fire, no problem. And so that kind of stuff has been around for my whole life, actually. And
Wow.
I wasn't exactly into it. I pursued the material world. I was working at a place called Physical Optics, which I was doing CAD work, virtual prototyping for scientists who are inventing things. So basically, they have like different phases of their inventions, and before they manufacture prototypes, they want to see it in 3D. Now, this was like 15 years ago, so it was a little bit more cutting edge. We were prototyping in CAD in 3D, so people didn't have to spend all the money to make it. They could see it how it works and in 3D Studio Max like 10 years ago they actually had environmental effects, collision effects, fluid effects, all kinds of stuff that you could do. And so that with AutoCAD, I was just working on all kinds of crazy inventions for NASA and Department of Transportation. So just like that, just been around a long time, and I had a hot shot job, basically is what I'm saying, 401k, health insurance, everything in Los Angeles, and I quit. I gave away my BMW, I gave away all my clothes and everything to become a monk, and there was this girl that she really liked Buddhism too. So I was like, hey, I grew up Buddhist. We can talk about this. And I didn't care about Buddhism at all, but she was into it. So she actually like really kind of in a weird way got me to be a monk. I actually
Sweet.
left her to be a monk, which she
Oh,
didn't appreciate that at all, but
jeez.
I think she understood.
Mm.
And I hope she didn't take that personal, but yeah, anyway, it was a kind of a crazy time where I just gave everything up and everybody was warning me not to do that. And I ended up traveling around for a while with, got empowerments from Dalai Lama, Mikyo Dorje Rinpoche, lots of Dzogchen and lots of high lamas basically getting empowerments, transmissions, and teachings and things. And then I got really disenchanted with the whole thing again. I was just like, this religious stuff isn't really for me, and the rituals and all this. And then there was stuff going on behind closed doors, and so I ended up just going on a 7-year wandering retreat, which is now coming kind of to an end. Before this shed and doing the drywall and everything, I was living in a dilapidated mud hut for like basically 7 years. It wasn't until some rattlesnakes started infesting the place and we had to get out because the dogs, I didn't want to get the dogs bit by rattlesnakes, right? We had 5 of them in there that surprised us. And so somebody made a donation and I was able to get this shed actually. People made donations and otherwise, yeah, I've been living completely without a job, with 5 dogs, and just on this little wandering retreat, which entails, different practices, but also mostly just to be with your own mind, to nourish your own mind, to heal whatever you got going on in solitude, right? And so I've been out here pretty much. I see people, I interact with people, but it's a lot of alone time out here off the grid in the mountains. So that's what I'm up to now and how I got here. I hope that's all right.
Yeah, well, it makes me kind of wonder what prompted the YouTube presence.
Oh yeah. So I've had the group since 2013 where I just hop online and meditate with people twice a day.
Okay.
So we have live sessions twice a day, and you guys are more than welcome to join anybody who wants to. There's no registration, you don't even have to give your email. You certainly don't have to pay or anything like that. And those live sessions have been going for a long time. But recently I got requested by Lama Karma Dorje, who's a Tibetan pretty well-known Tibetan teacher, Rinpoche, to teach, and I was messed up, man. I was like, I hate Buddhism, and he was sending people to my mud hut, or they couldn't find it, but he was just telling them to come find me. And finally, I was like, all right, I'll teach this Dzogchen Mahamudra stuff. And so before that, we had just been meeting in these groups doing mindfulness meditation. In our tradition, you don't talk about Dzogchen until you get the blessing. It's
Mm.
fun to have conversations and everything like that, but it's very, very strict. It's very orthodox in regards to like you can't really teach unless you've experienced or realized, or especially gotten the blessing from another teacher. So I got that and I realized its value, and he actually kind of saved my life because I was ready to just be completely alone. Um, and I started presenting that about 2 years ago. And then Yeshi, my dear friend Yeshi, who he facilitates everything on YouTube. It's basically his channel. Well, it's all of our channel, but he gets credit for all the hard work. He just started recording me as I was giving talks in the live sessions. And then next thing you know, he's publishing these YouTube channels. He's doing his little edits and stuff, and they're looking pretty cool. And people are actually vibing with these videos. And then it's like, wait a minute, we're preserving Dzogchen. Like we have something here. And the channel and the sessions have just been increasing in the past 2 years like crazy. Like I have a place to live that isn't dangerous, that isn't freezing cold.
That you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me a little bit of Ram Dass's story. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like you're like the reluctant, your teacher's like, you want you to go teach this. You're like, what? You know what I mean? But then it works out. He knew something, I guess, that about it
he
happening.
did.
Yeah,
He has some Vipassana eyes. He could see stuff about me that I could not
yeah,
see at the time. And
yeah.
there was nobody that listened to him. He told people, yeah, if you want to learn meditation, go see Dawei. Nobody, there were a couple people looking for me. But when I talked to them, they just did these data dumps on me and they didn't want to deal with awareness. It was like you said, when you're too fused into the thoughts, you can't even entertain the possibility of awareness. And so it was
Yeah.
the online people that actually were like, yeah, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That's what another thing what I mean about the time we live in. There's so many opportunities nowadays for stuff. And I want to double back and make it about me real quick
Sure,
because
please.
I was thinking about my tendency, when you were talking about that tendency to throw a bunch of rocks instead of like gaining really the awareness to just let that first rock drop. And that is a real thing, like for me. And it's very strange at all that my brain now can see something like that and ever when it occurs, just be like suddenly like, oh, I have to do that. That's a strange phenomenon for me.
Yeah,
Somebody
that's the fork in
incapable
the
of
road.
listening can at least listen a little bit now. That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's the
love
fork
that.
in
I
the
love
road.
how you were like not searching for it, how it was kind of like
Mm.
to be a teacher, how someone else was like, go see this guy. I love that. Something about that. I love that. That you didn't, because I think a lot of people kind of they get that ego game where it's like, now I've got something, I'm going to proselytize and I'm going to be a teacher. You weren't even
Mm-hmm.
looking for it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, and it just landed on you. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that at all because, to be a Lama in Dzogchen is a high honor. But I hadn't realized that they were kind of making it unobtainium through that culture of mystifying Dzogchen so much. And so one good thing is that, I'm able to just be a human, nothing fancy, no rank, and I can present Dzogchen and most of all, introduce people to awareness.
And
Yeah.
everybody's got their own story. You're
Yeah.
like, that's a very specific story you've got going
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
with very specific vectors on that graph and actors within your framework there. And I think that what can happen in spiritual communities sometimes is hierarchies emerge. I heard a good quote recently, and it was something like, religion starts with a mystic and it ends in politics or something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you're living on your own, extracted from the culture, and
Yeah.
you're probably a lot of help for people that just aren't there. And I think about the people that come to you and they data dump on you, And the fact that those same data dumping people, they could end up, they could learn what you've learned, embody it, and then go out and help some other people, you know.
Yeah, you're right. It's still a beautiful connection either way. Like some people would come into our live sessions and leave right away, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad they still had a connection.
Hmm.
And I would joke around and say that they got enlightened very fast and they left. But yeah, I think you're right about that. Every connection, even the appearingly negative ones, the seemingly negative ones, I am grateful for all those. And I haven't had a very peaceful kind of life. There was a lot of like, I got locked up as a kid and things, and there's a lot of violence. I got a bullet fragment in my leg. It was a little crazy up until now. Now I'm just like something's going on here with this group, with our channel, with these live sessions. We just published a book. Uh, it's just amazing, in the past year, how much of this is just rolling.
Those people are empty man in you. They're like making you be more mystical by putting their belief in you or something.
Oh, I was like, I, man, anything religious, anything spiritual, I was so turned off by it.
Yeah. Oh
It was
yeah.
just all
Religious trauma,
farce to
right?
me. Huh?
Religious trauma sometimes. I don't know if
Yeah,
that was
it
your
was a
thing, but
PTSD kind of thing because I don't want to get into too much detail and vibe it that way, but there are a lot of things that happen in spiritual institutions when religion becomes institutionalized,
mhm.
and it's icky, man. A lot of really disgusting
Oh
stuff
yeah.
happens,
Just look
and
at the
to
cat
me, I
like
just
yeah.
didn't want it anymore. I anything religious. Thankfully, now I can read scriptures again and chant mantras again and talk about this stuff. But that's why we shouldn't abuse people. That's why, especially like young people and things like that, because you could throw them off of the truth. Now, I know everything's ultimately gravy and everybody's leading back to ultimate truth and everything. But I feel like on a relative level, we can bring awareness to the fact that if you traumatize somebody through religion by not being honest or trying to get your rocks off or something like that, right? Then you're going to take away their spirituality and you're going to darken it for a long time.
There's so many
You
ways
know,
to go wrong within anything, within a fucking hospital. There's so many ways of going wrong, and I think in religion, some of the ways it goes wrong is unreasonable notions of suppression and somebody that is like maybe overly mystical or somebody that is overly legalistic or somebody that's got that sort of Zen devil thing going on, like somebody that's like, oh, I see through all this shit, so I can do whatever I want. And there's
oh
just
yeah.
so many ways of creating more karmic bad stuff. But I think that all of that stuff occurs probably outside of majority of it outside of like true awareness growing.
Mm.
You know what I
What's
mean? Like there's
crazy
all
is
sorts
that
of
my
pseudo
trauma,
awarenesses or fake awarenesses that can happen, I think.
yeah, yeah. My trauma actually probably expedited any freedom that I have in my life, in my mind. If it wasn't for the trauma, then, I basically had a person that I looked up to, a senior monk, try to hook up with me, and just to give you guys some context. And I was Mr. Dharma. Like I gave my whole life to the Dharma and had my vows and everything. And so when that happened, man, did it throw me off. I was just like, what? And how I came up, I wanted to elbow him in his face, but now I'm a monk, and it's like, I'm sitting here like this. What do I do? I really in this power dynamic. And
Talk
after
about
that,
disillusionment.
oh man, I came out here to the desert, the high mountain desert, and yeah, I went into a dark, dark place in my mind, and I'm glad I did because I brought awareness with me though. I had pointing out. They call it pointing out, right? You need to get explicit pointed out to awareness so that you don't just intellectually know what awareness is, but you have seen it. You have recognized it as a part of your mind. And so I had that recognition, and then I went into the darkest spots of my mind that I could find. I mean, the most violent, the most desirous, thirsty, crazy parts of my mind. And thankfully, those all floated to the surface and dissolved. I feel mostly free. I never speculate. In our tradition, we don't really claim to be enlightened. We know when there's self-liberation, you can verify that unbinding that we're talking about,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
cognitive
yeah. That's
diffusion.
fair, man. That's fair. If it's happened, it's happened. Like, why lie about
Yeah.
it?
Well, there's awakening and then there's enlightenment. Awakening is when you see awareness. I feel like now you're awake out of your thoughts. Now it's a little harder to hypnotize you and manipulate you and things like that. And you're no longer under the sway of your karmic momentum.
Hmm.
But then enlightenment comes when your karma has fully burnt out. So you may have recognition of awareness, but still have these strong habits that you're in. And the secret is that you got to eat the donut. If you have a strong habit of eating donuts, aka masturbation, sex, whatever, raging out, you just eat the donut. You got to keep, you're going to be doing it anyway. Now bring awareness into it. Now don't do anything about it at all.
Hmm.
Now just eat that donut. And then that's pure effortlessness is what
Do you
I would call
find that the
pure.
donut doesn't taste so good when you bring awareness to it?
Precisely. Precisely. You see the whole production cycle. You see from beginning to end. You're no longer kind of blinded within you're not an actor in the movie. Now you can see the whole set. You can see the lights. You can see the director, everything. And so
Hmm.
awareness gives you this increased visibility, and that's why they call it metacognition and all these things. And they introduce it, by the way, to special agents and police forces and things. Now, I'm not saying it's explicitly like it would be in Dzogchen. I think they're missing a few things, but this is very real, and it's possibly has evolutionary implications that when we start to, as humanity, come into this part of our mind it really will shift things because increased visibility it's hard to be an egomaniac, it's hard to be a narcissist, it's hard to be self-absorbed when you have awareness because you feel that self-absorption and you feel what it's doing in the environment and you're like no I'm gonna opt out of this.
Hmm.
And it's the same with your habits, they lose their sensationalism.
I think you can. I think you can have dawning awareness and still have habits, though. Like I,
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah,
You will still
and I agree with your thing of like eat it and eat it, eat the donut with awareness. But like you might still be eating donuts for a long time.
Well, the
And what
donuts are revealed. There's a threshold. The donut is revealed to be enlightenment all along.
right,
That's why you just want to keep eating the donut until
right.
you see the empty purity of it all.
Which I actually
Then,
think is distinct from loving your sin to death, which I've dabbled in too.
oh,
Like, but that's to me, loving your sin to death as a method is like a pre-awakening thing. That's almost like causing egoic or behavioral exhaustion, and it's dangerous. It's not a prescription. I wouldn't prescribe anybody to do it.
I've never heard of that. Loving your sin to death. Where's that from?
I don't even know. I don't know, but I didn't make it up,
That's crazy.
and it's essentially like a lot of people sustain their addiction almost by resisting it their whole life. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
they go through these shame cycles and they resist it, and so. But I do think it's a method that is like I don't prescribe it. I just think it's something that sometimes people make it safely out of. An
Well, you're
example of
very
it would
wise for that. I totally agree with you. That's why we say unless you have awareness,
yeah.
don't do this eating the donut technique
Yeah.
because then you're just a hedonist.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and it could get real dangerous, but go figure, like that's how a lot of people it's almost like purposely hitting rock bottom or something. Like I
Right.
went off the track and it's dangerous, but it is different. It's got a different flavor if you have a conscious awareness because you will start to notice you'll be like, what am I doing? Like this
Mm.
destabilizes me. I got a sugar crash and up and down. And I'm too aware of it, and I think those things soften out and disappear
You, you
in the light
guys
of
got it.
awareness.
You guys are on it, man. Wow.
And another thing that you said that I wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting is when you were talking about the dark night of the soul type stuff, and you were like, I sat down and I met all that bubbling up dark stuff, and it's almost like you go into it going, here I go to go in it, and then you go, oh, it's not even me bringing it to it's meeting me. I'm not meeting it. And then I
Yeah.
think beyond there's something there maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you go into the depths of your mind in those places you're not really supposed to go to,
Mm.
um, there's just a whole nother world here, you know. For example, in the common sense, we don't acknowledge the multidimensionality of our minds. We pretty much assume a subject and an object, but we don't acknowledge the fact that when we go to sleep, we create an environment in our sleep, then we create a subjectivity in that environment, and then we have thoughts and feelings about the environment that we created. And so there you have proof that we have multidimensional cognition. We have the ability to subdivide and go into a kind of inception. Now, why don't we even, theorize? We don't even think maybe that's happening now. Maybe there's a lucid part of my mind propping up this environment,
Mm.
and I'm creating a subjectivity and navigating within a mind-made reality. We don't consider that. In modern science, I always cite statistics like that we can only see in two dimensions, right? That's a modern scientific finding that the eyes can only see in two dimensions. So you could sit here right now and just rest in that subtle part of your mind that's making everything 3D. It's rendering everything, every detail. And you could actually settle into it. That's where dream yoga comes in, hypnagogic and hypnopompic states where you can do dream yoga. And so to begin to come into your whole mind outside of the coarse linguistic mind, outside of the language model, right? This thinking, thinking, thinking all the time, to come into that is miraculous. It's out of this world.
There's a deepening that gets talked about with people that awaken sometimes, and like sometimes somebody will have like an initial awakening, and then like it's like maybe post night of the soul, like you got the dark night of the soul, and then there's awakening, and then shadow work, time to put your construction hat on, shadow work time, and then beyond that, I get the sense that for a lot of people, maybe they stay sort of like that. They chill out and they're like a friggin' librarian or whatever the hell they do for the rest of their life. But for some people, there's a deepening, and then that's where things get really interesting. When you like, not that it's not interesting already. Or they call it
Right.
liberation for a reason, right? It's
Right.
it's going to feel awesome by contrast that you're not flagellating yourself all the time. But afterwards, there's a deepening that gets talked about, and that's really interesting to me. Is where people their lived experience becomes like cosmic from their
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, and you have different tour guides, different religions and spiritualities that take you into these waters in different ways. Some are totally provisional. They say, keep on worshiping, and then next life you'll be born in heaven and you'll be able to do your work there. Even in Buddha Dharma, they have that idea of Dewa Chin, Pure Land practices. That's essentially what a lot of Christians are practicing. They're saying, I'll be good, and then I'll get reborn in heaven, then I'll get enlightened there, right? Or they're doing some
It's
kind
all
of
ego
Jesus
stuff.
Christ guru yoga and things like that. But yeah, I think that everybody has a different tour guide, and what's remarkable about Dzogchen, this ancient path that's been preserved up there in the Himalayas and the Tarim Basin, really hard to get to and delete it off the face of the planet. It has this curriculum called the Nine Yanas. It started migrating up there 6th, 7th centuries, really early on from India during the Muslim invasions and the Mongols and everything like that happening, and then the warring within India itself. And this curriculum basically migrated up north. The Tibetans created a language. They didn't have a written language at the time. So from the 7th to the 12th centuries, they created the language to accommodate the Dharma that's actually migrating, right? And then they're preserving it up there until about the 1950s with the Cultural Revolution, where they just popped that Dharma bubble and it just went all over the world and leaked. But what you have here is a great tour guide. You have a very thorough tour guide. They have this thing called the eight aspects of consciousness, typically called the eight consciousnesses, but I don't like calling them the eight consciousnesses because they're all eight aspects of your own mind. Like eight aspects of the sun. It's hot, it's luminous, it's shiny, whatever. So we have these eight aspects. We have the five senses that everybody knows, this olfactory, gustatory, vision, auditory, everything, tactile. So those are the five, right? You're seeing, you're hearing, you're smelling. But then you have thinking, which is the sixth aspect of your consciousness, which includes emotions. So there's this thinking emotional mind that if I see something, oh, I like the bird. The bird has feathers. So you're giving thoughts to the thing that you're seeing. So then you have the seventh aspect, which is the egoic consciousness that says, I see a bird and I like the bird has feathers. So this is basically like looking at a map, a mechanic's map of your engine, right? When you look into when you buy a car, you get the
User's
book,
manual.
right? What's it called again? I forget.
User's manual.
User's manual, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the closest thing I've seen in regards to psychology and a map of our minds is the eight aspects of and Buddha Shakyamuni taught these. They were broken down by for those Dharma nerds out there by Asanga and Vasubandhu and basically outlined very early on, turn of the century, okay, and even before like 500 BC, and in the Vedas too. So in the Ripu Gita, they're talking about the same realizations we're talking about here. So anyway, you have this egoic consciousness. This is I like that bird, and that bird has feathers. I'm going to draw that bird. All these things. And so you have this map of your parts, basically, which you don't really see that often. It's either overcomplicated or it's not enough in a lot of fields. And so here, and then the eighth aspect is the basis itself. So the I is resting where? It's got to exist like a cloud's got to be in the sky. Well, our state of consciousness, our body has to be in the sky of another consciousness.
Hmm.
Otherwise, there would be a cutoff there. Uh, so I think what's great about this particular approach, or those who utilize the eight aspects, is that you can see what's going on within awareness. You can see when
No
you're
matter
thinking.
how many distinctions or how many distinct identities emerge, like, well, there's me watching me, watching me, watching me, watching me. There, you look at the background.
Ah, very good. And they have that. That's a ping pong thing that happens where they tell you to watch the watcher, and then you start intellectualizing that, and you say, "Well, who's watching the watcher? Watch the watcher, watching the watcher, watch the watcher." You
More
know?
egos subtly reconstructing themselves behind. I really think it's a big ego game. Like, but that doesn't
It's
negate.
intellectualizing. Yeah.
It doesn't negate that there's like a bottom or something to that. Even if
A
it's
base.
ends up being pure physiology at the bottom, there's a
Yeah.
bottom.
Well, the main point here is that within awareness, that you can see all this stuff. You can
Yeah.
see patterns of ego, of apprehending, right,
Yeah.
or self-absorption,
Yeah.
or creating stories about yourself, or uh, needing that ego high and things like that. So everything becomes visible if you're thinking a lot. If you're thinking about a product, I'm not going to say any products, mention any product names because I'm that much of a hardhead about it. But think about apples a lot. You can now that you have awareness, you're thinking about apples a lot. And so before you wouldn't, you just apples, apples, apples. I gotta have some apples. You don't know why. And so now you can zoom out and you can effectively die. Like your body can be totally wounded and you can be sick and your brain barely working. Awareness will still
Hmm.
nourish that and hold that.
I've
And
seen
that's what we
videos.
want.
I've seen videos where there'll be like a married couple or something, and they had a kid, and the kid has one of those birth deformities where there's like a big chunk of their brain missing, almost nothing. Like there's specific syndromes where it's like they're essentially a living creature minus a brain. And
Oh
to
yeah.
see the parents still love the kid and coddle it is like, I could cry right now even thinking about that.
Yeah,
The point is that even brain not having kid is alive,
that's right. It's still consciousness.
and there's no reason to not think that there's like a the aliveness is that same aliveness at the base of every identity you could
Mm,
create for yourself,
yeah.
and turns out to be like that's free from all the egoic shit you're gonna have to deal with likely being in this society. And to take it kind of like just a slight divergence if we could, like
Sure.
as an overly heady person, as somebody, first of all, there's a reason why people record you. You have a lot of knowledge, and in the world of relative like ego possession, that's the jam this day and age is knowledge accumulation and coming off smart and
Yeah. Yeah.
gaining status from all that smartness. And I don't know if you've encountered this or you know what I'm pointing to. There's a thing I think that the thinker realizes is vulnerable to is sometimes when people awaken the delight from not knowing. not you know what I mean? They become some of them almost become less articulate, less, you know, and it's like I'm gonna start losing stuff I once knew, but in almost in a trade-off for embodiment, like a serious what I'm doing right now atrophy, like
Yeah.
a an
Well,
atrophy of that control freak
mhm. I
nature.
would consider that, they have these like different states that you can go into of samadhi and things like that. And so you can go into a kind of slumber and perhaps you will lose some of your intellect. I mean, we're all going to lose the surface intellect anyway, but typically with this practice, your intellect gets benefited
Mm.
because you're offering pliancy and spaciousness. For example, I had a brain injury in 2002 and I never thought I'd be able to be smart, you know. I also didn't grow up with schooling and things like that. I didn't I barely graduated high school. So the awareness practice for me, I think facilitates any type of exploration into your cognition and expanding that out. Um, it basically gives you the ability to read things and study things without that rigidity, right? That I gotta
Okay.
memorize this and I gotta learn this, and you're kind of in this flow state then,
Fluid.
and yeah, and I think your mind works better like that until it
Well,
doesn't. I'm talking about the surface mind, surface cognition that burns out one day.
it's still a positive spin that you recovered that very cynical thing I just said with, which I'm glad you did. You know what I mean? Like your brain's gonna actually work better. Stop it, Justin. Which is great, you know.
I want to ask about you mentioned Alan Watts a while back as he's kind of like a known as like a Western spiritual. I think he was in Zen.
Love Alan Watts.
Yeah, and I'm curious now that you're on YouTube, do you track any of like kind of the like Western Neo Advaita? Like I'm thinking of like Gangaji or Adyashanti
Eckhart
or
Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle, Rupert Spira. Do you follow any of these guys? What are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty dogmatic. I follow my teachers. I stick to the Nyingma tradition like that a little bit strictly, but I have kept up with a lot of teachers like that, and because there is a movement happening, isn't there? And I think you all are part of it. And now there's a new phase of it with these YouTube channels and things. So I definitely keep up. That's how I got here. Is I was just I check in on a few people online and yeah, pretty much just Dharma stuff all the time, right? So I found I think it was Vinay that way, just basically looking around. But uh, Adi Shanti had a great little career, so to speak. I think he stopped, but I feel like he helped a lot of people, and he's a great example of how you can present this to this modern audience. People call it Western, but I think it's more the modern world, the modern
Yeah.
person who's pretty sharp, right? They're very smart. And so in the Dzogchen scriptures, they and tons of teachers have predicted that you will be able to teach Dzogchen more efficiently and it'll land a lot better on these modern people. So yeah, people are going through hell and it's called the Kali Yuga, right? The Yuga of destruction and everything. But at the same time, Dzogchen will flourish. That's been stated a lot. And to me, it makes perfect sense that, I'm one of the people that, and this, I didn't do it, it just spontaneously came together. It really did, with very little planning or contrivance. But I'm one of the people that's repackaging Dzogchen. I'll admit it. For the modern person, I introduce people to awareness right away. Normally, that's blasphemous. That's out of the question. Person needs to do 500,000 mantras, 100,000 prostrations, many years of sitting in a meditation box, lots of years of donating money and energy.
Meditation
And
box. Good
yeah,
Lord.
they have actual meditation boxes day and night that they say, look it up sometime.
That's
It
hardcore.
looks a little painful. I was in one for a little while. And yeah, so lots of preliminaries, endless preliminaries. But basically everything, vows, visualizations, yogas, whether it's pranayam or whether it's physical asanas and things like that, they're all made so that you could see awareness. It's
People
very
must lose
simple,
their shit in those
purely
meditation
present
boxes.
awareness. What's that?
I said people must lose their shit in those meditation boxes, like go bananas, like go crazy sometimes. Here's the thing. Uh, Sensory deprivation in Hollywood's got its neon claws into it. People are intuitively do this already. Like separate and try to get as silent as they can. Not everybody calls it meditation, but I think a lot of people intuitively already try to do that, trying to unplug. But that's pretty hardcore to go into a box
And
and
yeah, well, it's a box that you like. It's more like it's more like a kitty litter box. It's not like a box that you.
okay. I thought it was like the whole like prison solitary confinement. Like,
No, no,
how
no,
long has
not
it
like
been?
that.
No light coming through.
Give me a piece of rice. It reminds me of the joke. They have this joke about those retreats where you can only say two words after 3 years of being on retreat, right?
Oh.
And so this guy went on one for 3 years, and he came out, and his teacher asked, "Okay, what are your two words?" And he says, "Food bad." And the teacher says, "All right, get back to it for another 3 years." And so he goes to his meditation box and sits for another 3 years. Comes out, "What are your two words?" And he says, "Bed hard." And so, all right,
I thought his
go
next two
back.
words were gonna be food good.
He says, "Go back another 3 years." A long 3 years go by, and he comes out, and they say, What's your two words?" And he says, "I quit." And the teacher says, "Good, you've been complaining since you got here."
Ah. Yeah, some of those the hardcore tutelage things, like I love in Kill Bill when the girl goes to have you ever seen the movie Kill Bill?
I think so, a long
The
time
main
ago.
character, she goes to go learn like the most hardcore esoteric kung fu or something in the jungle, and the
Yes.
teacher's got a long Fu Manchu, and it's so cool the way they do it. But the discipline is insane. Like it's just over the top discipline, and in the end, for like the return is so small. It's like really the discipline of devotion. And I think of so many stories like that that kind of wrap up the way you're saying, where the student by the end is like, "This is bullshit," and the teacher's like, "Exactly. Now get the fuck out of
Exactly.
here."
That's great.
You know what I mean? But like Leonard Cohen spent a bunch of times in a bunch of time in a monastery, and it's real tempting when you're burning out from the modern world, wherever you are on the planet, and you're burning out from the capitalist dream. You're like, I'm
Or the
ready. I'm
communist
ready for
dream.
the meditation box. I'm ready for
Yeah, I'm ready
anything.
for meditation.
But so many things like the alchemical or the alchemist journey, which a lot of it is kind of a like, now go back. Now see it, and do you get it yet? And I think it's just a lot of the times it's a real innocent desire to try to get people to see what's right here. I can't believe I got to do all this stuff to get you to see what's right here. Like, you know what I
Well, that's
mean?
why they have a general rule that somebody has to really come to you in Dzogchen. They have to kind of invite you, and sometimes even this person has to ask 3 times before they get the teachings,
Yeah.
to really make
That's
sure they get
hardcore. It's hardcore. It's like paramilitary in some ways. But
it.
you ever heard of Angelo from Simply Always Awake? He's another one of the guys. He's really good.
I don't think so.
He keeps things nice and simple and practical. I like him.
Yeah. There's
Um,
so many coming out of the woodwork now, all these spiritual teachers who are essentially saying the same stuff, things you're saying.
Coming at it with different angles
Yeah,
and
just
different flavors, and
yeah.
in a weird way, I even feel like we're a little bit doing that just by questioning everything to death. You know what I mean? And then, but at the end of the day, there really is something to like a clicking, like a click moment where you're like, that's where I was supposed to be looking, or that's where this vessel was supposed to be looking.
Well, you guys are inventing a whole new yana here, a whole new path. I realized this with Gary. I was like, wow, if they ask enough people questions, they're going to be enlightened, because they're going to keep on running into all these masters and teachers and practitioners, and it has no choice but to get to you, does it?
Well,
Uh,
yeah, I
uh,
think sometimes things can be systematically uncovered. Like I remember at one point very early on, even in my notions of like because a lot of us never hear the word enlightenment till we're adults or something. Like it never crosses our path. We're like, what is that? What's enlightenment? what's awakening? And then very early on, without knowing what it was, I made it because they would present you with all these figures. It would be like, here's Osho, he's enlightened, or here's Sadhguru, he's enlightened, and you're looking at them and you're trying to figure it out. And I
Yeah.
made a list one time of people I knew that I decided to classify as enlightened, and I just thought of people that were not egomaniacs. I just thought of regular people I already knew, that nothing crazy and mystical happened. They weren't devotees of anything, but they seemed to already be just chilled out and not an ego defensive reactive person like many of us very innocently are in this modern
Yes.
culture.
I like the
And
way you called that innocent. Yeah, it is.
yeah, and I think through process of getting a little creative and just look and be open and willing to try something new, and your nervous system, I think, will follow cues of that and be like, well, let's try feeling like this. Let's try feeling like that, without
Yeah.
even an ego at the helm necessarily, you know? And then you end up like Angelo, who even after awakenings going, I can't explain it. I don't have an agenda, but behold, I'm speaking. Words are coming out. And to the normal egoic mind, they go, I don't buy it. I don't buy that. You got an agenda. But I think for people that have have no awareness, they kind of know what he means.
Yeah. Yeah, people tried to get me to create the registrations and the paid retreats, and I just kept it free. I said, make this as easy as possible to get to without
That's
advertising,
awesome. That's great.
without
That's
promotion.
awesome. I love that. Well,
And
Dawei, I just want to thank you so much.
Yeah,
This has
thank
been
you so
an
much.
incredibly awesome conversation.
yes.
One thing we like to do around here is kind of give our guests the last say. So if there's like one overarching message you want to give to all the people out there watching it, I'll open the floor. You can do that now, and then maybe just let them know where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff.
All right, well, I'll just start by saying deep thanks to James and Justin. I think you guys are great. I was a little bit taken aback by the wisdom that's coming out in such a friendly, like bro-ish way. I hope I'm not disrespecting, but you know,
Not at all.
it's really cool to see that, that you're packing that wisdom. And I had that feeling about you guys when I was watching your videos. So I do wish your channel and your viewers the best of luck. Keep on doing what you're doing. It's this new thing, and it's really great, and we're connecting with each other too, family of spiritual practitioners. And so, yeah, just lots of love to everybody out there. And I feel like we can regain the sovereignty of our minds. We can be free. We don't have to give in to all these like drugs and ending our lives and feeling hopeless. It just takes a little bit of diligence and a little bit of exploring, and we can find that freedom in our minds, and it's very important. I feel like it helps out the entire cosmos when we free up ourselves, and when we actualize ourselves, it helps the entire collective in profound ways. So, anything I could ever do to support you guys to keep that going, let's all continue to activate, right?
Yeah.
Regain our freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
And just
Keep
thank you
keep
guys.
keep everything nice and sane. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks so
just
much.
deep gratitude. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, in terms of where they can find you,
Oh yeah.
where can they
Yeah,
find you
sure.
at?
Yeah, we have a site. It's a pretty basic little site, meditationonline.org.
Yeah.
And there's a button there, and it tells you when our next live session is. And we use Jitsi, so you can just go right, you click that button, and it takes you right to our live session. Jitsi is really easy for mobile. It's mobile friendly and web friendly,
Yeah.
so it's pretty straightforward. You don't need to download anything even. Yeah, join our live sessions. Come check it out if you want to. I mean, the people there are amazing. They're just, they're all like you guys, just friendly, wise, deep, compassionate, normal people that aren't hypnotized zombies of materialism or some crazy religious fanatics, right?
Yeah.
It's just average people there with families and across a wide cultural spectrum, lots of different age groups there. It's diverse. So meditationonline.org, and we also have our YouTube channel that dear Yeshi has been maintaining, and he records and everything. He does a really great job there. So check it out if you feel a connection. And Dzogchen's a little bit more advanced. It's ninth yana, it's the highest and most simple. It deals with naked awareness, but like you guys were saying, that's a little tricky. So yeah, I think that's about it. Just thank you for your time and keeping this stuff alive.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
Beautiful.
for accompanying us with your dogs and
Yeah. Thanks so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, for sure.